Hello everybody, welcome to the next episode of Crowd Resilience TV. Today with me, my dear friend Josh Guetzkow. He has a PhD in criminology and sociology and he lives in Israel. It's so good that also you came to Vienna to spend some beautiful days with friends and colleagues from all around the world for the Better Way conference.
It has been beautiful. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. And you know, I need to smile a lot because actually I wanted to start off my Crowd Resilience TV series with an interview with you. And we did it via Zoom. And then, there was some noises in my house. And so I couldn't take the material that time. And I said, when I watched it, I was like, Crowd Resilience is something we need to do when we meet in person. When we have a little chat and sit down together and do this interview in person with, you being here live, that's just really cool that we now meet each other. Thank you so much for coming again. So what I want to ask you, because I ask all my interview partners, is the question of the questions: what makes you resilient in your life?
What makes me resilient in my life? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is when I say my ability to suppress my emotions. It's very easy. I think you can very easily get overwhelmed with all the things that are going on in the world. So I'm pretty good at kind of setting that aside and just trying to focus on the near term, what I can do. I think, one of my major motivations, of course, is my kids, because I see the world going in a way that it's not the world that I want to leave for them. It's not the world I want them to live their lives in. So that's one of the big motivations for me. And I think one of the things that helps me to be resilient is there is a little bit of a disconnecting and just focusing on what I'm doing. Not getting sort of caught up in, maybe this isn't quite right. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe nobody's going to listen to me. No, you let yourself get caught up in all of these negative thoughts and feelings, but you kind of have to channel them out and just focus on what you're doing, believe in what you're doing, and also know that there are other people doing all of those other things that you think maybe you should be doing as well. So I think everybody needs to kind of find a strength, find what they're good at, and just pursue it, knowing that all together we're going to, be able to succeed and make a difference. I have a lot of faith in that. So I think that helps me anyway to be resilient.
Strong words and clear words, and I totally get what you're saying. And I also, when I was, watching you when you were standing at the rally yesterday in Vienna, and I tried to read your mind somehow, and it's a good thing. Because I could see you were all the time really calm, and you were really, when I came over and they asked you a question, and you're just a person that I think has the ability to really get into what you ask in the moment, and then you just deliver straight if it's an information, if it's a question that you answer in your field of expertise. And I think, as you just said, it's so important that we all just stick to somehow what we are good at, and then, of course, get this little broader reach in other fields as well. Because I think you're also a really good activist. When I can say that in a way that you are a person that gets involved, and when you're asked, hey, can you speak here or there, you would do it. You would not be the person that sits in his lab and just focuses on data and presents it to some colleagues.
Right, that's true. Yeah. But on the other hand, I'm not the kind of person that's going to organize that rally or organize this huge event like you've organized it. I'm happy to talk, I'm happy to speak with people, I'm happy to connect people together, but there are things like that I'm just not good at. It's just not me, But that's okay, because there are people like you that are wonderful at those kinds of things. So
thank you.
It's like an orchestra working together.
Yeah, now I have to say a quote that I said in an interview. Before I did an interview with you, I did an interview with Ryan Cole. And there's this quote, and that says in German first, so, alleine sind wir Töne, gemeinsam sind wir ein Lied. Which means, alone we are notes, like for music instruments, we are notes, but together we are a song, you know? And that's somehow pretty much what you just said. And it came to my mind when I was talking to Dr. Ryan Cole as well. So the next question, you know, you have kids. I think 2 kids, right?
Yes.
How old are they?
15 and almost 18.
Okay, okay. Wow, and you live in Israel?
Yes.
Okay, and how did your kids, you know, got along in the last 2 years now almost in Israel? How was it?
It wasn't easy for them by any means, but you know, I think they did better than a lot of kids. I think they were able to keep up with school. You know, we had a good infrastructure at home, or we eventually got a good infrastructure at home for them to be able to study on Zoom, and it definitely wasn't easy for them. And you know, they've struggled, each of them in their own way, with the challenges of being kind of isolated. And you know, and then going back to school and having to wear masks, and I mean, you know, we could have fought to say have my son not have to wear a mask at school, but then you ask him, how do you know, he doesn't want that type. He doesn't want to be kind of outcast because everybody's wearing a mask. What? So I'm not going to wear a mask, like, you know. So for me, it was difficult to kind of like, well, you know. I would like to fight that for you, but they didn't want it. So, you know.
I understand what you mean.
But they came out of it. They're good. I feel fortunate. And you know, there was a bit of a silver lining, because it kind of forced us to spend more time together as a family, right? We were, I mean, literally locked inside, you know, pretty much. For weeks on end, you couldn't go more than 100 meters, 500 meters from your apartment. I mean, you could, but it was looked down on, and well, it was illegal. So you know, we kind of created rituals at home and spent a lot more time together as a family. I think in some ways it brought us closer together. So
that's good. That's good. When you talk about your kids, I have the feeling, you know, that there's instantly is coming emotion in, you know, and there is probably pain that you somehow as a parent felt with them, or you know, in the situations where you say, you know, mask wearing is so unhealthy, but you knew they were doing it in school to not be the ones that get bullied and so on. You know, I think it's really strong. So I sometimes think it's good that my son is just 4, because like in kindergarten, they didn't have any of these for the kids.
That's good.
So I was like, if my kid was in elementary school, 6 years, 7 years old, I would probably like go to the principal's office every day and would not have had the time for what I've been doing throughout the last years now. So I think it's like, inform them and let loose and let them be kids, and inform them that they should get the thing out of their face as much as they can.
Right.
Yeah, but still let go also if it's in another way hard for them, or find different types of education formats that are good for them, because there's I think a whole new movement on not homeschooling but on new schools with new really important, there is even a school I heard in Florida, and they really focus on mind health as well. So people, they get taught how to meditate, and that's just something I really like, and it's something that's the future of schools, how they could look like, you know.
Yeah,
that's a good part. And now when we speak about kids, what would be the message, you know, for you to human mankind, not to your colleagues, not to, you know, let's say legal experts, not to the people who sit in power positions. What's your message to human mankind?
That is a huge question. You always have these wonderfully huge questions that are so difficult to answer. Try to find your intuition, try to disconnect from the television, disconnect from the media, because these companies, these corporations that own all of these media outlets, they do not have your best interests at heart. Politicians do not have your best interests at heart, no matter what they say, right? It was Albert Camus who said, the well-being of the population, the well-being of humanity has always been the alibi of tyrants. They're always sort of presenting their very narrow economic interests as something that will benefit everybody. Right? They're very, very good at presenting their interests as being good for everybody. And it's difficult to recognize. So you have to disconnect from those messages. You have to disconnect from all of that and just try to kind of, try to refine your intuition about this. Because I think once you develop a sense, for me, for example, I was a couch potato growing up. I watched TV all the time, and then at some point in my life, I couldn't afford cable TV anymore.
Where did you grow up? Because I think your family is...
I grew up in California.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I couldn't afford cable anymore, so I stopped watching TV. And then a year later, I went and I watched some news program, and it just looked so fake. It looks so artificial, and when you're kind of caught up in it, you kind of can't see that. So just disconnect from the sort of reality of corporate America, the reality that they want you to see, and try to reconnect to your own intuition.
Wow, wonderful words. And just to give us a short insight, I first saw you when Council for Health invited you to a weekly General Assembly meeting. We always have that on Monday, and you spoke there. And I don't know who of my steering committee members, brought you in, and then I was listening to you presenting the data so clearly, And it was like, wow, I need to interview you, because you're just a brave scientist that speaks up, but in such a nice way that people who probably would not listen to some other active doctors would listen to you then, And so it is just so important that you spoke up. And when was the moment that you said, I will, because you did that, and you did it twice, as far as I know, I will speak in these FDA online hearings and put my comment there for, I think it's 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So how did that come?
Well, it came about, so I did this, I analyzed the vaccine adverse event reporting system in the US. And I used the same methodology that the CDC has used in published papers in the past, the same methodology that they said they were going to use to monitor VAERS for safety signals, and that's what the system is built for. And I wrote this report and I started circulating it, and then I got in touch with people, in particular David Wiseman in the US, and he's just a watchdog on the FDA and the CDC. He writes comments, he's very involved. And so through that, I kind of got into this idea that, oh wow, you could actually go and present, make comments to this expert committee of the FDA. And so when they were about to have the meeting to approve the Pfizer vaccine for children 5 to 11, I wanted them to know the safety signals that we were seeing in our analysis of the VAERS system. So they couldn't say they didn't know that this was clearly a dangerous vaccine, or something that at least needed to be investigated. So it was really when they started going after the children that I said, okay, I need to say something, try to get through. Now, the sad part of it was that, you know, I don't think they listened to those things, because there was one vaccine injured person after another, very reputable voices, even a senior doctor at the Mayo Clinic that was talking about his tinnitus, and these heartbreaking stories. And then they come back from that, they have a break, and then they come back and they have a kind of an open discussion. Mm-hmm. They didn't say one word about anything that had been mentioned. The only kind of adverse event that they were willing to recognize and talk about was myocarditis. And even there, you know, they completely minimize it and underestimate it. So it's just, you know, it's just sad that they're not listening. They're just not listening, and I don't know how to get through to them.
I know what you mean, and I had like goosebumps like crazy now, because it's really, when you hear a scientist clearly presenting data, and it should be a meeting where you bring in your thoughts and say, hey, let's talk about that, you know, and then they just ignore it completely.
Right. And you know what? Now that you're talking about ignoring completely, we did a Freedom of Information Act request to the CDC, because they said they were going to be doing this the safety monitoring of VAERS. I did the analysis. I saw safety signals off the charts. I could not hide it any way I tried to slice and dice the data. So we said, well, let's see what they've been coming up with, because they said they were going to be doing this every week. So we FOIA'd them, and they came back to us and said that no, they weren't doing the safety monitoring that they had promised to the American public, that they had promised in a congressional briefing in the fall of 2020. They had promised they were going to be doing it. They said, go talk to the FDA. So we turned to the FDA, and the FDA recently came back and said, we've been doing it, but we're not going to share the results with you.
I mean, sometimes it's like, you know, in the movies when you say this can't be true, right?
Right. It
can't be true that you were telling me before we were staying at home, we were not allowed to leave the house. I mean, you know, we have 2020, 2021, 2022, and you would assume these people have to listen. You know, it's not like if they want to listen, they have to listen, you know. So I think there should be a whole focus on even more, and if it's us, if it's people like you presenting the data more and more, because I think this is really important, that we don't give up, even if we think they are not listening. I mean, we all have that recorded. No one can say they were not warned, and you know, we really have to see who is reliable for what has been happening for so long.
I agree with you. We cannot give up. And it's hard. It's hard because but so that's the other thing, is that there's a world of propaganda out there that they want to present the reality in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that's how the reality is. And so, just take an example. I live in Israel. The institutions, the government, the media, they're not willing to talk about it at all. But if you look at the vaccination numbers, for example, they're dropping. The people have lost faith in this vaccination program. They won't admit it, but you know, so you have to kind of remember that the reality, you have to be careful not to let our reality or our vision of reality be warped and shaped by that sort of propaganda.
Absolutely, yes. So
because they'll make us lose hope if we listen to them. They'll make us think that we're not making progress, but we are.
Yes,
we are.
And that was like what I wanted to say now, that we are still, presenting them data, bringing in new information, and to talk about David Weisman, I want to say something about this genius. It's David Weisman, PhD. And I got in contact with him when he was presenting also in a weekly Monday meeting data about the children's vaccination program. And at that time, some of the doctors who gave me statements for the webpage, Wir zeigen unser Gesicht, we show our faces, where we are an initiative against COVID-19 jabs for kids. I asked him, hey, can you help me out? It's November. By the way, my husband did a statement as well, and he needs to speak in the medical board tomorrow about his he didn't even do a video, he just had a written statement, 3 sentences, and they called him in to go to the medical chamber for just 3 lines, saying that we can't say it's safe and that we need more, data. Somehow I can't remember exactly what my husband said. It was like just a concern of a father who's also a doctor. And so many other doctors needed to go to medical chamber for that, for being sued by them. So my husband was not sued on this statement, but they invited him and he needed to talk there. And I said, hey, tomorrow my husband has his appointment. Can you just share your slides and data with me? And that night still, it was I think, a 3.5 hour call that we did then with David Weissman until I think 2 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And my friend Uwe Alschner joined in. He's a historian, but he is a great journalist as well. And then another friend joined in. And, we didn't know each other. And then we ended up, David Weissman being Jewish, and he talks to an Austrian doctor. He said, that's amazing, and I reach out to him, and then I bring in my friend who's a German historian and journalist. And then at one point, it got really emotional in this Zoom call, in this very spontaneous Zoom call. And we were having tears in our eyes and said, yeah, but let's join forces and, bring the message out, help each other out. And we are so many doctors, scientists, legal experts, activists, all together, free media journalists. And we can make this world really a better place, And so this Zoom call ended in sharing personal stories, and it was just amazing, And this is what we are trying also all day, reaching out to other friends, colleagues, experts. You're sharing your data here and there, and others sharing their data. And so I'm pretty sure we can make a big effort by just keep bringing the data and the truth out.
Well, there's another point there to be made with this connection, this connecting to people that you never would have connected with. And I think I said this when we did our first interview that was never aired.
Yes.
The stars shine brightest in the darkest night, right?
Yes.
That this is another silver lining here, that we're in a dark period in the world, but it's enabled us to see each other, right? And to connect in a way that never would have been possible. And that's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Josh, thank you so much for all that you're doing. Keep up the good work. And we, meet again soon, I hope, in person.
Yes.
So thank you, Josh, for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and join us next week for our next Crowd Resilience TV episode every Friday, 8:15 CET Vienna time.